I believe that the Cardinals would be smart to plow whatever they're going to invest this offseason. I think they'd be smart to plow it into pitching, and
couldn't agree more.
And certainly no disrespect to Jay Happ, because I like the job he did for the Cardinals last year, but we keep reading this in the Post-Dispatch and other places. Not a shot at them either, but it's just like, they're going to try to bring Jay Happ back, and I'm like, look, man, you got to remember what happened last year, and it's like, let's not have hey, we brought Jay Happ back, we're good. It's like, no, you're not.
They asked Jay Happ to do an impossible job, and he succeeded. He did what you should expect from Jay Happ and a little more, but that doesn't mean you should ask him to do it again. Like, it was too much to ask him in the first place.
And they need to just they just need to go bigger, to use that cliche. And you guys do have Max Scherzer is the highest rated starter. You have him 4 overall. And the thing that made me gulp even was that when you did the estimates of what the contract would be, for example, you had Max Scherzer 2 years, $35 million a year. Average crowdsource was about closer to 3 years, about $32 million a year. Do you think that would that be too expensive for the Cardinals' taste?
I think that they could stomach it, especially the shorter deal.
Right.
I think that if you're looking at the longer term deal, that's a lot of money to pile in. If you're thinking a 2-year deal, well, the payroll is projected to go down by about $25 million this year, just from contracts rolling off, Carlos Martinez's options not getting picked up, Carpenter's. So you can definitely find a way to make this not mess with the payroll too much. And look, I understand that they're not going to suddenly break through the luxury or the competitive balance tax ceiling. It's just not how they've ever operated. But I think for a short-term deal, you can stomach a little bit higher average annual value, because what you're really worried about happening with a deal like this is, imagine if Matt Holliday, when he came to the Cardinals, just broke, and then he was just like not a player in the lineup, like Dexter Fowler's contract, except, bigger, twice the size. Then, oh man, it makes it really hard to build a team 4 years down the road. It's hard to screw up that badly on a 2-year deal. And so I think the Cardinals would be willing to entertain that. It's entirely up to Scherzer, honestly. Like, if he wants to play in St. Louis, they should make it happen. And I don't think they're constrained from making it happen. But the fact is, there will be 20 teams in baseball who think they can compete next year, maybe 15. And we'll say, hey, Max, do you want to play here for 2 years? Here's a bunch of money. And he's just going to pick where he wants to go. So
I agree. Yep.
I'd love for him to come to St. Louis. It'd be a great, reunion homecoming story. And also, he's just awesome. But I don't think you can count on it. And I don't think this is a thing where if you're just willing to go spend X amount of money, you'll get him. Everyone's going to spend X amount of money. And I think that at this point in his career, he'll just pick where he wants to play.
Yeah, I really do agree with you. And again, I appreciate the how do I say this? You are very much connected to reality here, because we can all make a wish list, and that you probably know this or somewhat know this, but in St. Louis, even during the season, but now that we're in the off season, there's been people are fetishizing shortstops, and I get it. I'm not knocking anyone, but it does not seem to me that that's a realistic pursuit for the Cardinals. I just don't think they have the stomach for the kind of money that it's going to take to sign the top guys at shortstop.
I think it'd be one thing if they had a huge hole there, and the way that the payroll stacks up, like they could afford to fit these guys in. They're young, their windows kind of overlap, but they're just not starting from zero. If anything, they have too many average shortstops, because they have 2 guys who I think are roughly league average.
Right.
So you're not actually getting that much upgrade by getting a better shortstop, because it's not the biggest position of need. You can upgrade a lot more in the pitching staff. And I think it would be great if particularly if Carlos Correa would come to the Cardinals. I don't think it's very likely. I don't think the team will pursue him. It doesn't really fit with the way that they build teams. They made their big position player free agent acquisitions with Arenado and Goldschmidt already. Like those are the guys that they wanted to kind of shore up the infield. I don't think it really fits just the right way to build this team at this point, because they've done those trades to add Correa. It's just like a little too concentrated, and it's not making the best use of DeJong and Sosa.
And the other thing too is I'm a big advocate, and why wouldn't anybody be a big advocate of just maintaining that defensive strength they have? Because it's not just because they won Gold Gloves, but just fielding Bible stuff. I mean, some of the, I studied the votes there, and the way Cardinals defensive players almost across the board are held in very high regard, and that helps your
Correa,
pick. Yeah,
Correa has a great
right.
Like, he's a very good defensive shortstop. And, I mean, I guess Javi Baez is too, although I think that's the wrong fit for the Cardinals for a multitude of reasons. Just, I'm not sure he'd really want to go to St. Louis after being a Cub for so long. But, yeah, picking Seager is a big defensive downgrade. And actually, I think the free agent that I most would want to target is Marcus Stroman. And basically for the reason you're talking about.
Yes.
Like, it's really important to the Cardinals, the way that they build the team. I mean, like, very clearly they're trying to do this at this point. It's for defense.
Right.
They've prioritized defense at a lot of positions. So get the ground ball guy who doesn't really allow a lot of home runs and gets a ton of balls in play and put him in front of this defense. You don't think he'd like pitching in front of the Cardinals defense instead of the Mets defense? It's the biggest upgrade imaginable.
You and I, my brother, or I swear, we are on the exact same wavelength, because I was about to ask you about Stroman and I won't be redundant, just what you said, but yeah, he seems tailor-made for this particular team, and even in that ballpark, and it's just, he would be very, very good as a Cardinal starter. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I think there'll be a big market for him, but I see the Cardinals hanging around in those discussions. I'd be really surprised if they weren't in on that.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that kind of the way the pitching market shakes out, there are a lot of different but differently shaped but similarly valuable pitchers that are in the, call it, 8 to 15 tier. Robbie Ray is strikeouts and walks and home runs. Stroman is none of those. He doesn't do any of those things. And then you've got, Kevin Gausman, who is only 2 pitches but might be great. Eduardo Rodriguez, very consistent. And the fact that there are so many different of these guys means that I think they'll each kind of segment out into markets. And the Cardinals probably won't pursue them all indiscriminately, but the ones who they want, they should go after harder. I mean, for me on the outside looking in, that's Stroman. But if they say, oh, you know what, like, we think we could do awesome things with Eduardo Rodriguez, all I would say is, like, this is the kind of pitching market where you should figure out who you want and focus on them, because there are many options for similar prices. So I hope they're doing that.
I'm with you. And if I could ask, if you were to, with just the Cardinals specifically in mind, if you were, we both agree Scherzer would be a terrific fit for many reasons. And then you and I definitely agree Stroman for sure. And we're basing that on just the style of pitching. It's absolutely a great fit. But after that, all right, like, who would be the third guy on your list, starting pitcher? And you can even sort of make it a two-way tie or even a three-way tie. Like, who's next on your list as a fit for the Cardinals?
So I actually would go down the board decently next. And I think there's just a ton of guys in the middle tier where the Cardinals could get 2 or 3 at a pretty decent value and not give up too many years. Whether you're talking like John Gray, who might be great in St. Louis and just looks like he's begging to have his total potential unlocked, or let's say, I don't know, Zach Greinke, I would love to have on the Cardinals. I don't know how great he is anymore, but he'd be very interesting.
He would be.
Like, yeah, lots of these guys who are pretty good. I'd say those 3 are the ones that interest me most, but there are a lot of guys who are pretty good, feel like they're one adjustment away, or maybe just one mindset change away. Like, oh, I'm approaching this wrong. I know I have a good defense behind me. Let me just throw strikes. There are a lot of guys who would benefit from, who just feel like if they benefited from one change, they could be a frontline starter. That's the thing that this class is deepest in. And I mean, I don't know that the Cardinals have the best reputation for turning pitchers into better versions of themselves, but they've been able to do it with Wainwright, and most of that credit goes to him, but he'll still be there. I think that there's a chance to add, like, if you don't get one of the very top few guys, just do defense and depth and get 2 or 3. And if 2 of them work out and one of them's a 5th starter, then great. And if one of them works out and 2 of them are 5th starters, that's still not bad.
Ben Clemens with us here on the Bernie Show from Fangraphs. You're listening to 590 The Fan KFNS. Always enjoyed talking to Ben. Do you, John, was I like talking to Katie Wu of The Athletic, and it was him and Gersh did a Q&A with her, and I thought it was excellent. And I think, I know it's a pay site, but I would encourage people to, first of all, subscribe to The Athletic anyway, but
Katie's been doing great work.
She's fantastic. I wasn't sure at first, only because it's like any other writer that I don't know. You have to kind of,
day.
You got to wait and see, right? So no, she's been fantastic. And I found that, and I don't know what your feelings are. I thought that Mo and Gersh were pretty revealing, relative to the way they usually are. And they made it clear that pitching is their top priority. Didn't indicate how big they're willing to go. But the one thing that they said, and I'm sure that on some of the message boards, people are overreacting. Mo said to Katie Wu, in effect, like, well, our everyday club is set. And people are like, oh no, they're doing it again. I think I understand. I hope I understand what he's saying. They like the team they have. They need to increase its depth, and they want to go in on pitching. They think that's the thing that they need to hit hard. And if that's what he meant, then I'm okay with that.
The way I read it is the 8 starters who go out there most days, we're not going to change much. And honestly, unless you're signing a premium shortstop, where would you make a change this offseason? You're not really replacing any of the outfielders. Anybody better in this class? There's one great outfielder. It's Starling Marte, and he's not really fit. He needs to play center field to get his best value out, and why would you bump Bader off center? So there's not really a starting 8 place to upgrade the Cardinals, obviously. And so, if you want to make a trade for a second baseman, maybe, but there aren't a lot of good second basemen available on the market unless you're going to go big for Marcus Semien. The Cardinals aren't. It doesn't really fit with with the way they allocate resources. I just don't think it's that bad in a class that has a ton of pitchers who are interesting to say, our hitters were set for this offseason. Let's spend our money on pitchers. I just think that's what they're saying. And like you said, I'm sure it'll get a lot of, oh, here they go again. And if they don't add any pitching, then that's bad. But if they do, that was the right place to add.
And, you also have this situation, and I know that, look, not all prospects pan out, obviously, but, you're going to have to get a lot of at-bats for Nolan Gorman, really soon. And of course, against right-handed pitching, that's an automatic. And, they can play him at second base, they can DH him, but there's other guys behind him. There's Juan Yepez. There's all these other guys on a kind of a fast track, and you're going to have at bats for these guys. So if you get locked into some long-term deals at shortstop or second base or one of the corner outfield spots, then all of a sudden you kind of have a glut. They've got to keep an open lane or two for the players they expect that will arrive, right?
I tend to think that that's an overrated concern in that you can usually work it out. But what I would say is this: it means you should not be overpaying for any of these guys. If Marcus Semien's market develops slowly, and in February he's like, actually, I want to take a 1-year, $25 million deal, well then great, let's do that. Or if he wants to take a 4-year, $15 million deal, that's way under market for him. Great, but it doesn't make sense to kind of pursue market value additions at places that, like you said, don't really make the team's job easier in the long run. If you're getting something awesome for it, if you're getting a great bargain or a great player that you didn't think you could get, then fine. But you need to be getting something in return if you're going to make your, if you want to call it your Tetris job. You got to fit the pieces into the holes. If you're making that job a lot harder, somebody better be paying you for it.
Our friend Ben Clemens from Fangraphs is with us. Couple more for Ben, who's generous with his time. How do you see if there's a DH? Let's presume there will be one. How do you see that? How do you think they should go with that in terms of filling that slot or sharing that slot?
I think a decent amount of it depends on Yepez, and I don't know if Gorman's going to be in the big leagues next year. It feels like that might be pushing it just based on his age. He's 20, maybe just turned 21. I think that's kind of hard, but they have really, would you say 4 outfielders for 3 slots if you count Nootbaar?
Yep.
And so that works pretty well. And They have Yepez if he comes up. I think he can. He might be a power only type guy, but he's got power. That's not a bad only. I think that between giving guys rest days, and it makes a lot of sense to give Goldschmidt and Arenado rest days at DH, even if they don't want to, and even if Arenado's value somewhat comes from his defense. You just have to rest guys. And the way that baseball is played today, it's hard. It's hard work. And players break down. No one plays 162 games. So using the DH slot to like rotate outfielders, get some of those guys like just lighter days, rotate first baseman, get some of those guys lighter days, and just try to keep the best bats in the lineup without like slotting one guy into full-time DH. I think that's the way this team is set up. It's not like they have an obvious person to put there, and it also wouldn't be a great allocation of resources to go get one because, yeah, the team has enough kind of fringe starter level players that moving their everyday regulars to DH to give them rest doesn't kill them in the field. So if I'm them, what I want to do is just shuffle through maybe 2 to 4 people who just want rest and let it work out that way.
It's a great spot for matchups too. If they're going to look, I'm assuming they're with the managerial change. I am assuming that they're going to be more matchup oriented and more flexible in their thinking that way. So the DH can be a valuable piece of land for that type of thing. So that to your point, just kind of reinforcing what you said. Talking about the 8 position players, one thing, if you still have time, one thing Mo said.
I think this is the last one, if you don't mind.
Okay, cool.
My haircut.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. All right, Mo seems to think Paul DeJong can come back strong or whatever. They're not giving up on him. What do you make of that?
I think so. I don't know if he actually believes it. He should obviously say that, but yeah, I think that's pretty fair. He didn't have a great hitting season, and I don't think he's quite as good of a defender as Sosa. I think it's very close. I think he's underrated as a defender because he's, big and slow. He has really good actions out there, and he's very smooth and has a good enough arm. But there's just no reason to think that this guy who's been on balance in the majors, an average hitter, and on balance in the majors, an above average defensive shortstop, is suddenly broken. Like, it's just, it could be. I don't want to say that it's definitely not because recent results aren't good, but you have to come from the position of, it's not so bad. And also, he wasn't a bad player last year. He was good defender, bad hitter, and, it used to be that we were fine with that at shortstop. It's tougher these days. Shortstops hit better, but I don't see any reason to look at him and say, oh, this guy can't play in the majors. If it weren't for Sosa being pretty good last year and kind of being the apple of Schultz's eye at points, I think we would just say, oh, yeah, like DeJong's the obvious starter. And it's not weird to me at all if they end up with kind of a 3 people for 2 spots deal with Edman and Sosa and DeJong. That's not a bad situation to have.
No, it isn't. I do agree with you. Well, listen, man, I didn't mean to keep you, and go get your hair cut. I appreciate your time, man. And next time,
thanks a lot for having me, Brian.
Yeah, next time I'll make sure I keep the conversation shorter. Thank you so much.
No. I will hopefully come back on for a long conversation soon. Have a good day, man.
Yeah, love talking to you. Take care. That's our friend Ben Clemens. Does a great job. I don't want Mr. Clemens to miss his haircut. Jim Hewer can't do that.
We all need a haircut.
Absolutely.
From time to time.
Miss Bernie cuts mine, and she's got the job, and she does pretty well with it. So,
oh yeah,
although I'd like to, my guy Rich that's been cutting my hair for a long time. I feel bad, so I'm gonna have to go see him at some point. But anyway, we're gonna have to take a break here in a minute, because we got a pretty quick turnaround to our next guest, and I'm looking forward to that one, which is again frontofficesports.com. AJ Perez wrote a story about the Rams suit and Stan Kroenke and a settlement offer that was rejected. That's coming up at 4:05. But before we take a time out here, Jim, what did you think of Ben Clemens with like some of his? I'm glad him and I are on the wavelength about pitching. It's got to be pitching. The Cardinals cannot take the risk of going through the crap that they went through last year, because that cost them any chance they had to hang with the Brewers and then maybe win the division. They eliminated themselves because they didn't have enough pitching depth, and it blew up on them. So I'm all in on just go get pitching. There's no such thing as too much pitching, which is the old cliche, but it's true. So anyway,
it's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
It always is.
What do you think?
I can't disagree with any of that. The one thing I feel, and I think it's just the way the Cardinals do business. I'm losing my hope of go get me a guy who can just flat out hit.
Yeah,
put in the middle lineup. I knew it was a pipe dream, but when you asked, what do you think? What would you like to see? That's the one thing I would really love to see. But what I think was going to happen, the DH is going to be a combination of Gorman and Yepez and, maybe Nootbaar on some days. I just think that's how they're going to address it. I don't think the Cardinals are going to go out and spend any money on anything other than pitching. And if they get good pitching, can you really argue with that? I mean, they won 90 games, what it was, without good pitching.
Right.
So you put good pitching with this group, you're above 95, around 95 wins then.
And there's, I think there's some upside with the players they have. I think those three outfielders can all even do better. And what they also have to do. See, I just think that people are, I don't like to see people that love their team. It's okay to have these fantasies about Corey Seager or whatever. And frankly, I think St. Louis media, not everybody, of course, but is almost like borderline irresponsible in sort of portraying this as this is a realistic possibility. For example, Corey Seager, who is going to have to move to third base soon because defensively he's losing range. You know what Ben Clemens estimated that he'll get? Ben Clemens and the crowdsource that worked on this with him. 8 years, $30 million a year, $240 million. And I don't think he's wrong because the New York Yankees are going to be in on that big. Mm-hmm. And the crowdsource people, 7 years, about almost $28 million a year. The Cardinals aren't going to do that. No. But it's like, so I don't know why people keep writing like, go out and get Corey Seager, as if it's like going out and, getting some utility guy or whatever. I mean, really? You can never say never about this, but, come on, man. But what I do hope is that they build a better bench and spend some money on that.
Yeah. I agree. I know we have to get to a break. I just throw a out of left field thought that because I was going through rosters and things. It's a Cardinal type move to go to an organization that has a player that you really like that's on the downside and they may sell, right?
Yep.
I'm going to throw a name out there. Everybody's going to go, oh, come on. Yeah, I'm going to say, oh, come on. But a left-handed bat would be Matt Olson. And I don't know what the heck's going on in Oakland, but it sounds like they're moving away from anything. So I would at least make a phone call and go, what do you got going on here?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure
it's a pipe dream.
I would hope.
But we've seen pipe dreams happen before.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not fixating on these shortstops.
No.
My hope is that they go big on a pitcher, and then they don't do the Arenado Part 2 thing, which is like, oh, we're done. Yeah, no, you're not going to be done. No. You need a better bench. You got to give your young manager more flexibility. You can't be so imbalanced. You can't have a bunch of right-handed hitters.
No, they got to find a left-handed bat.
And there's ways to do that without spending $300 million, right?
Yes.